Of all 9 professions, it's the Mesmer, to me, that is most tempting to go to condition damage for the open world. There's very convincing Condi Mirage specs out there that have very, very high quality of life. In fact, when Path of Fire came out, a friend of mine started playing a twin staff Mirage build that has taken hold, and a lot of people actually still stand by. It's got excellent defense, and it's very, very simple, very spammy to execute. So, big shout out to that. However, I do still think power is the better way to go for me, and it's actually not a Mirage at all. It's on the Heart of Thorns elite specialization, the Chrono Phantasma. The way I like to play this in the open world is to build the ultimate summoner. Let's have a little bit of a look at some clips of gameplay here so you guys get a real feel of exactly what it's like. The really defining thing about this spec is how amazingly it throws offensive boons onto itself, keeps them there, and has a million allies so that it will never take damage, even if it's fairly squishy. So first I want to show you what it's like taking the build into contemporary expansion content, Path of Fire here, we're in the Desolation, and what it's like to kill random mobs that are around. Things in the expansion tend to be a little bit tankier, be able to do a little bit more. How quickly and cleanly can we kill stuff, not overkill it though, and then move on to another target without having to slow down. I don't want to be standing around waiting on cooldowns. How well can we kill chain? And well, as you can see, we're doing pretty well here. The main thing to think about here is what if we were doing a heart? What if maybe we were building up a mastery? Maybe it was one of those rare collections where it's asking you to find a specific item that's dropped from a specific foe or something like that. Maybe there's a dynamic event that's dropping certain things. He actually saw I had a bit of a problem breaking a condition so that I could mount and cross that chasm, and that's exactly why across this series I've been recommending stuff like Sigil of Cleansing or just getting a little bit of cleansing there somewhere, because if you can't mount in that little moment you end up falling down a gap or having to glide, and it's a little bit more precarious. It's just little bits of added stress that you don't really need. So you also want to pay attention here how often I have to range versus melee, how often I'm actually even being hit. You'll notice I've barely been touched by a single mob that I'm fighting so far, and that's because I have tons of AI. I just used the phrase ultimate summoner, and boy, we're gonna justify it. It's what I love about this build. So yeah, we do perfectly fine against all this stuff. I want to show you as well what it's like. Maybe we run across a random event. On a previous video, I actually already showed you this champion. The main thing that we're dealing with here is epic auto attack pressure. This build does not have that much resustain. You'll see how much you're getting pressured really hard. I even got CC'd there. We don't have much resustain for reasons that I'll explain in a second. The way we win is by actually not being attacked in the first place. We want the enemies we're fighting to attack. Look at that army of stuff I've got, right? We want our summon army to be the thing that takes the damage. But also, we can break bars very comfortably. You see all this melee aggression I can do with the sword here? It's because I'm getting that break bar down. So it's a nice thing that we have available to us. Another thing that I've shown previously is this mushroom down in Heart of Thorns. As long as we dodge his main attack, we'll actually be okay. On this build, we definitely do have the break bar pressure if I time the window correctly. And you'll notice what's actually happening here is we can kill this boss actually very, very quickly. Much quicker than the other build I think that I showed you on here. It's not that the other build was bad or anything. It was actually a lot sturdier than this. But you'll notice that he's actually melting down hard. And if I got even one of these break bars, we would have soloed this group event in mere moments. You notice here, though, it's definitely harder for me to shake the aggro. Also, there's story, right? These videos are meant to be about story. These are builds for story. If you play a Mesmer and you struggle, one of the notorious story instances that we had about 2 years ago was here at Caudicus's Manor, where we had some pretty grueling boss fights. Well, I did want to show you guys these. There were two. There was this one here in the fire room, and then later on we fight a big version of Caudicus in the puzzle room. I do apologize if people end up feeling a little bit sick in a second because we'll have some spinning walls. But again, it's about getting regular break bars. It's about not having that aggro. Look, I'm on 100% health, and there's just so much spam and hideous stuff around. In moments, I could take this out. That one was real time. I didn't actually speed that up. Here again, we have the final room. There was an extra mechanic in this room that involved actually running around collecting bloodstone shards to break the break bar. And if you pay attention to my offensive boons, you'll see we have billions. Throughout this entire section, you want to be watching the vulnerability that I'm putting on the targets and my boons. However, for this specific fight, I will say Lady Casimir is dropping time warps that I sometimes get clipped by. I'm trying to stand out of her time warp so I don't actually have their assistance, but that has been bundling me up a little bit here. If you look as well, as Mesmer players, we should all be familiar with shattering and clones. You look at how regularly I'm getting those shatters out. Since the Chronomancer rework, there aren't actually so many shatters for us to play with, realistically. But we can use the ones we have pretty much as regularly as they're coming off cooldown. Or somewhat, you know, actually, we could have even more clone spam. So here, we would kill this boss very comfortably. But we have to go and do the mechanics. So, you know, how comfortably do we do that? Do we get pressured? Do we take too much damage in the meantime? Do we have dodge rolls available to get out of these orange rings? Do we have the movement we need? Well, we do. You know, we're not limbering around crippled and constantly condied up and stuff. We can do it, play the mechanic, and then we have an amazing burst window here as well to take this boss out. So, yeah, it's a strong build. I think I have one more clip I want to show you guys as well, and that's a bounty in Path of Fire. This is something that you will be tempted in, you know. Bounties, people really have to LFG for a lot of the time. It's a lot like those Heart of Thorns hero challenges, but can we do it? And well, I just picked a random bounty. I think this is quite an easy one. You'll see he only has like 2 augments on him, and he's a little bit slow. So, you know, maybe we would struggle with some of the trickier ones. You know, there's a difference between a regular bounty, a difficult bounty, and a legendary bounty. But I just picked one from Amnoon. I'm not really trying to cherry pick here. This was the only one I went for, and, well, we can kill it pretty comfortably. You will notice, however, I do go down in this fight right as I'm about to finish the boss off. And it's mostly because I just didn't WAS and D correctly. So most of the builds I'm showing you, they are there to be comfortable to execute and to get you through the vast majority of PvE very cleanly and very comfortably. And they also are supposed to make you feel like you have control in these very difficult scenarios. So that's exactly what this Mesmer build is. But you do actually have to start paying attention if you really start going out of your depth and doing stuff like bounties. But they are possible. They are possible, and I wanted to show it here. So yeah, I think I'm going to die now. I go in a bit too deep. Look at the army we have. I go in too deep, and I stand on one of his gunk pools, this mechanic here. I just stand in the red AoE. It's often that simple in Guild Wars. Just use your brain. Don't stand in the red AoE. And so here we can see a bit of my downstate. Unlike with other builds, our downstate is not that strong in terms of its synergy with Signet of Agony, so you've got to be careful about that with the Mesmer. However, we do have a Phantasm. I'm not going to mention the downstate Phantasm in the rest of the commentary for this video, but we're going to talk about Phantasms lots. And just try to remember, as I talk, that that's there for the downstate too. So there you go. That's the clips. That's how it works. Let's see how you two can be a very dominant Mesmer player in the open world. A class that actually, I honestly find kind of tricky in a lot of respects compared to some of the other professions. So the way the build operates is very simple. It's mostly just press lots of buttons. But because you're very reliant on utility skills and also your profession mechanic skills, it can feel like you're accessing a lot of buttons as opposed to a lot of other simple open world and story related builds that I like to play. But nonetheless, that doesn't mean that this is necessarily hard. It's just you're pressing a lot of stuff. One of the biggest challenges I think Mesmer comes up against in the open world and story is being an engine that keeps rolling and driving through kill chains because it is very cooldown reliant. But that's where Chrono really comes in. We have some excellent alacrity uptime that allows us to just chunk our cooldowns down and keep on rolling. So let's first look at the skills themselves, then we'll roll in on the traits and what weapons I've got and why. There are several choices. First of all, though, the Greatsword. If you're going to be running a power build in the open world and story, Greatsword is fantastic. First of all, it's 1200 range, so that's a big asset immediately. It means that you can create that gap, and the enemies you're fighting will be more likely to target stuff that is close to them instead of you. Second, it's got some good break bar on it with the skill 5. Not only is it a hard CC, but you're going to be putting cripple out because of one of our traits as well. And then finally, when it comes to the Phantasm, every single Mesmer configuration has a Phantasm on it somewhere. We actually get 2 because of our traits, the Phantasmal Berserker. This is the single, like, most important skill on the build to use extremely regularly. You're going to see in a second the way that we're set up is we get so many of our boons directly tied to Phantasms. And so, because this summons 2 Phantasms at once, and they do good damage while they're at it, in fact, you'll see it's even more than that, you're really going to want to favor this. You're going to want to open. So say I want to kill this elder tormented remnant over here. We'll go along the stairs. I'm probably always going to open with the Greatsword 4. I might throw out a Greatsword 2, and while it's in the air, that will also create a clone. I'll do it. But you see, just the Greatsword 4, nothing else. We put this guy to... We killed him, but on the initial burst, we put him to like 6% health here. I did a tiny bit of an auto in there. This auto attack also does more damage the further away you are, by the way. So if you can help it, if you're in a really nice, clean, open field, it's worthwhile trying to stand back as much as possible. But it's not, you know, a super important condition of the build. So that's Greatsword. The other weapon set you can actually mess around with. I do believe in Sword. Sword in PvE has incredible power on Blurred Frenzy because it does insane damage and it's an evade, right? So this is a 1 second evade, but also we blow things up. This is actually so strong, it's massively nerfed in the competitive formats. The skill 3 we don't really care about too much. The autos on this are actually not bad as well. You are vulnerable doing them, but the third strike, the Mind Spike down there, that does more damage to foes without boons. And it's very easy to find enemies without boons in the open world, or to find enemies with just a couple, which then you rip through various mechanics, like, you know, say Mind Stab here. Or even just rolling the auto itself is actually going to rip a boon off, right? So the second time you go through. So you can actually find the third strike of this auto hits up to like 11k or something sometimes. And, you know, it's worth looking at before you get back into Greatsword and want to create the gap. Where you really get to mess about is your offhand. Shield is totally okay. So the main benefit of Shield, if you're going to be running that, is that you get the quality of life on the block if something comes close. You obviously get that little bit of protection there, isn't a big deal. But on the 5, you get more quickness and more alacrity with big break bar damage. I find, however, that Shield is just a bit slow. What I really don't like in the open world is as I'm running around on any class, I see a target, I want to kill it. I don't want to see a target. Let's say I'm on weapon swap cooldown right now. What am I going to do if I'm on sword shield? Well, I'm going to use the 3, the 5, Blurred Frenzy. Okay, we cancel cost the 5. And now what am I doing? I'm just rolling autos, right? This doesn't feel as good as if I'd put out some big meteor phantasm. If I want to get a phantasm out on the shield, I actually have to wait for a long, like, channel, okay? I have to wait for Echo of Memory to go through. I have to stand there, block, 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 block. Finally, the phantasm comes out, and then maybe if I want big value, I'll go for the deja vu as well. It just feels slightly lower tempo than running other options. Sword offhand is okay. Very strong phantasm on there, but the might is kind of overkill. The parry is actually pretty good damage. My favorite, though, is actually focus. I think focus, what was I was running the beautiful alchemy focus with it that looks like a potion. This is my favorite because the 5 will actually, you can summon it at range, again, just like with the greatsword. So when you've swapped out of greatsword, you don't have to go barreling in just yet. You can summon it at range. It will be ranged itself too. It's got excellent damage over time. It obviously, when we get to our traits, will resummon itself. It does a little bit less damage, but the quality of life you're getting here is all the mitigation on the reflects that it's creating as it goes on. Then also, the Temporal Curtain allows you to bull stuff up. And this is break bar damage, and it lets you bull stuff up, so that then when you swap back to the Greatsword, you can Greatsword 4 right through it, and you get the epic cleave. And even this Phantasm here gets the big cleave. So it's kind of that sustaining of range. That's something Sword Offhand doesn't do. That's something that Shield doesn't do, that I actually really like about this. Torch is, I guess, okay. It's kind of not very much damage, but it at least has a stealth disengage for you. But I like the focus. The whole giving yourself swiftness used to be really relevant back in the day. Nowadays, you're probably just going to get on your mount and move on, right? So you don't actually worry about that side of things too much. But that's why I like focus. It's up to you, though. Let's talk about utility skills now. First of all, for the heal skill, there is only one heal skill that is remotely good here for the way that I've set this up. We're all about spamming phantasms, and so it's going to be the Signet of the Ether. Yeah, you can get value out of the well, especially if you're trading for Well's Heal, which you're going to see we are in a second. Yeah, if you're human, this is actually a really good base heal with lots of health on it. Yeah, you could run Ether Feast, but to be honest, the Signet is what it's all about. The Signet will allow you to summon a ton of greatsword phantasms. We need an area with higher density of mobs. Hold on, let's I don't actually remember which portal it is that takes us here. Here we go. This is a little bit better, I guess. We don't have to do so much running. So what the Signet allows us to do is to press Greatsword 4, Signet, Greatsword 4, and we're just going to summon an ungodly army of phantasms there. And look at my boons immediately. Look at this. If you've been watching the whole series, you know that all the builds are calibrated to give you lots of might, lots of fury, lots of quickness. None of them, in just a couple of animations, are spiking so much of all of them that last so long as what you just saw there. That's before we even deal with the actual impact of the strikes themselves. So, but you can do this on your focus as well. So the idea is to get your phantasms cast and then get the signet so you can cast them again. And it's kind of fun, actually. There's not like a really easy set rotation as you're running around in the open world, because often the thing that's going to finish a fight or engage the next fight and is highest value for that is not like strictly in line with the constant flowing of perfectly immaculately refreshing all the cooldowns. You actually see that there have been some builds that are very similar to this, even in very, very late end game. So you play this and you get used to some of the playstyles you might be expected to do later on. So you don't need a set rotation, but you can just think as you're playing, all right, well, if I wait a couple more seconds, I can cast my next Berserker and then heal, and I'll actually squeeze out a bit more value, kind of thing, you know. So that's why the heal, and the heal is fantastic. Okay, really, really, really good. Holding it for the passive, I don't really recommend too much. There is one downside, and that's that you won't have your heal necessarily on demand for the actual purpose of healing all the time, and that can contribute to the feeling of squishiness on this build. That is a major thing, okay? So what you want to do is make sure there is always a cushion of clones and phantasms between you and the enemy. They will always target all this other stuff, and you've got loads of them. But in mass AoE scenarios, it's something to be careful of. Just like you saw with that bounty fight at the start of the video, you know, if you're not careful, you can go down. All right, so then we look at the other utility skills. Now, don't get me wrong. On Mesmer, you got a lot of fun stuff that you can do. A ton of it, all right? But I think, overall, my favorite is actually just to take another 2 phantasms here. So I'm actually going with the Phantasmal Disenchanter and the Phantasmal Defender. So, first of all, the Disenchanter rips boons. But if it hits someone who doesn't have boons, it does a massive amount of damage. Look at that. 2,777 baseline hit on the Disenchanter. That is crazy, okay? And that's before we've buffed him. We will buff the hell out of him with our traits, okay? So I'll summon him. You'll see how he looks. He arrives. He takes aggro from us. And he immediately slaps a strike out. And he does his damage, okay? And then he'll come out again. And from this as well, we're getting offensive boons again. We're getting all these offensive boons from this, which aren't listed when I mouse over the tooltip. It also bounces reasonably well through groups. What's really beautiful about this is if you're against 2 enemies, it will bounce from one guy to the second guy, and then back to the first. So it's like you do double damage to both of them, all right? Or crazy boon removal. So that's just excellent damage. Next, and you know, offensive boons. Next, and aggro shake. Next, we have the Phantasmal Defender, who does a bit of damage, but also applies good taunt, okay? Now, we're going to see with the traits that some of our traits allow our phantasms to do more, but they do less damage, and less damage, and less damage. The thing is, the taunt won't be diminished. It's only the damage that gets diminished. The taunt will always linger for the full duration. The boon rip will always stay at the full duration. So the actual utility of the taunt here is just really good for break bars, okay? You cast this, you're going to put 6 seconds of taunt out onto an AoE packet, actually, okay? So this you'll just see as you do your fights often, as you're running through, you're going to see stuff is constantly taunted. And again, it's just another reason why enemies won't attack you, or they're going to be actually interrupted and unable to do very much interesting. So, yeah, these two are just really, really, really good. Because, again, look. Ooh, why do I have 24 might, fury, and quickness right now? Jesus. Okay, so then you do have kind of a choice. They're all choices, really. I like to take the Well of Calamity here. This is damage, cripple, and weakness. The cripple is kind of overkill because we have so much cripple anyway. But the weakness is nice. If you're running the scale utility, which in the start of this series I described in my gear video, and you already have mass weakness, I definitely wouldn't take this because the damage really doesn't justify it. One of the other wells that's really good to use is the Well of Recall, actually. What this will do is sustain a ton of alacrity on you, and in many ways I actually like this even more. You just have to make sure you stay for the last tick of it, which means you can be kind of stationary, but it's not so slow that you really feel like you're slowing down. Alacrity is good because it just means everything is coming up that much quicker and you're ready to roll again. So don't overlook this well. It's also chill, right? So we've already got cripple, we may already have weakness. We may already have other soft CCs, like, well, is Taunt really a soft CC? It's a drain on the breakbar anyway. Now we're rounding that even further with the chill, okay? So Well of Recall is definitely a good choice. And even if you are really looking at a big packet, the Well of Precognition is really good as well, right? So I wouldn't sneer too much of that. In general, I don't think the Well of Action is that important. It's obviously mass quickness, but I think we already have enough quickness, and so you don't have to worry about that. You could take Stealth if you like. You could take a Big Disengage with Blink if you like. Utilities are yours to have the choice for, but those two wells are kind of the big contenders for me. Calamity for all the damage, or Recall for all the Alacrity, Break Bar, and a little bit of damage. Then for the elites, I suppose you could be still on Mass Invis, or you could still be on the Signet of Humility if you really want to break the bar really quickly. If you're a race where you think these are fun, go for it. Like Hounds of Balthazar, I think it's a fun skill. Let me be clear. I specifically mean on Chrono it's a fun skill, as that whopping 240 cooldown you can ignore by just casting it in Continuum Split, so you can cast it way more regularly than any other class. But in general, I would say Gravity Well. Once again, it's another mechanic that balls people up, just like with your focus, allowing all your stuff to do lots of damage. And again, it's another thing that will shake aggro away from you. It's another thing that will break bars. It's another thing that will even heal you as we look into the traits. So I love Gravity Well. It's one of my favorite things about Chrono. It's not a high impact slot really on this build, to be honest, I don't think. It's obviously good, and as far as elites go, they're always going to be good. But there's more interesting synergies and things we're looking at as far as this video is concerned. So there you go. That's the skills. That's how they run. And now we can move into talking about some of the passives. So usually at this point, I would talk to you guys about the traits, which we will do, of course. But I'm going to take a brief second to look at what I'm running for gear here. So I have another video where I talk all about gear and everything that's really good. But there's some special considerations for Mesmer that are best talked about now. So we know that we're very Phantasm-based. Now, Phantasms don't inherit certain things from their master, okay? Phantasms, when they're spawned, will look at your attributes, but they won't look at stuff like the Sigil of Accuracy or the Sigil of Force. Anything that's like a percentile modifier, they won't take. So you want to think about that just a little bit more when you are building some kind of Phantasm spam build. And so I've gone in a slightly different take here. First of all, my runes here, you'll see are runes of the pack. Which is one of those rune sets that gives lots of attributes. Okay, so we've got Boon Duration on there, of course, which they're not going to be taking, or that's not going to be relevant. But look, we get power and then that extra bulk of 125 precision at the end. Precision is really important here because a lot of the time on a lot of your builds across the 9 professions, you're trying to get up to 100% crit via percentile changes, like a Sigil of Accuracy or a Signet or something like that, or traits that give you crit chance, but not actually precision. If it's a trait that's giving you crit chance, it might not be affecting your Phantasms. It has to explicitly say so, and there is a Chrono trait that does that we'll look at later. So you've got to be careful with this. I, even as I'm currently configured, don't think I get them all the way up to exactly 100%. So you want to be a little bit more cautious here. I go with Pack because that T6 on Pack here, which is when I get in combat, I give myself 5 Might, Fury, Swiftness, and so on. That has actually really fun synergy with my Phantasms because I give it to my Phantasms. All right. Now, people who know Phantasms very well might question that, but we'll see when we get to trait. So that's why I'm on Pack. But it also goes for Sigils too, where it's actually may even be even more relevant, right? Any kind of percentile thing I'm not running, right? So Force is not here. Instead, for this video, I've got the Superior Sigil of Perception, so I can stack this up for a ton of crit chance, okay? And it can roll and roll and roll. And then that will actually give it to the Phantasms, as far as I know. We also have the Sigil of Air. I like Air. Then over on the Greatsword, I'm running Blood for life still. Just to round me out a little bit, I like the life steal on the Mesmer because I'm not always on access with my heal because I'm actually using it for damage, which is kind of a bad move, to be honest. In this situation, I kind of like to just round it out a bit more. So I'm running Blood there, and then I actually have Frailty as well, which is vulnerability stacking. We have Epic Might, okay? And we have Epic... any kind of offensive boon we like, but we could go a bit further on the vulnerability and roll that up just easily and smoothly. We throw a bit of Vol out on when we use a Phantasm skill. We actually use our own animation. That never used to be true back in the day, but now we do. Our own animation does actually Vol, okay? We throw our own illusionary one, but it's not much, okay? So I run Frailty here actually, just to try and build that passive vulnerability up even more. As we interrupt with gravity wells and stuff, obviously, we will be doing vulnerability. You'll see in the traits in a second. But that's the idea. So yeah, do think about that when it comes to your gear. Now let's look at the passives, shall we? So we are running Domination, Illusions, and Chronomancer. Now, all three of these have Grand Masters that just synergize and roll into one another beautifully in such a cool way. There's a good argument to take dueling on a power build. Because you get an epic Grandmaster in there that just turbocharges your damage, and there's certain things, but generally speaking, from all the gameplay that I've done, it's this specific combo that feels so good. Again, you can potentially try some Mirage variants, but they're Condi and have all the limitations of Condi that I discussed in the original video. We've now got to a point where there's too many mobs attacking us. Alright, so let's go back upstairs when it comes to our traits. I don't think there's anything too active that's really going to matter for us when we're actually showing these off. So, let's roll on first with Domination. First of all, our miners, we will be Vulnerability when we interrupt people. So that means Focus 4, that means Greatsword 5, that means the Gravity Well. It's everywhere. That also means if we interrupt on the Phantasmal Defender. So that builds our Vuln up. It's not like you can guarantee then that you're going to get loads of Vuln every single fight. A lot of the enemies in open world and story, their animation rate is very low and very slow. So while in PvP, quite often, if you throw some kind of CC out, you're going to get an interrupt because people are always using skills. In PvE, that's not so true. They're very slow sometimes, especially the earlier back in the day you go. So you can't guarantee this, but it's there. Next, whenever we daze or stun, regardless of whether it interrupts, we apply Vuln. That means that spamming out our Shatter time sync here is actually really nice because it will keep dazing over and over and over again. And one of the main things we do is we're constantly creating Phantasms, which constantly creates clones, and you just have to keep shattering. Keep shattering. That maintains alacrity on you, and it gives you value in any way. And so this is out now actually really worthwhile, because look at that, 5 vulnerability, but you can actually have 3 different things shattering up, so you go up to 15 every time you press this. If one of those interrupts, it goes higher and so on. So, yeah, you do just keep using these, the first 3 particularly, over and over and over and over and over, keep that alacrity going. So this does mean something. Next as well, Fragility. Anytime we have vulnerability, it gives us more damage. Only 0.5%. But that means if you've got a full stack of 25, you're looking at 12.5% more damage. That's nice. And again, another reason why I like the sigil I just showed you guys. Now, looking for the actual slots here, I like Empowered Illusions. Our illusions do 15% more damage. It's pretty cut and dry. The others are alright, but this one's a really nice one. For this one, Egotism, we just do 5% more damage. Oh, sorry, it's 10% here in PvE. I would take this even if it was only 5% in some of the competitive formats. And again, the others just aren't that convincing. Quickness, we already have more than enough, so we don't need to get it on Interrupt. And we already have the boon removal we need, so Shatters removing boons isn't so relevant. We do actually shatter a ton, right? And every time we shatter, it's always like a triple clone shatter on this build. So, maybe if you're up against a lot of boons, you would actually get a ton of value out of this, heaps of it. But Egotism is going to always be working for you. Lastly, for the Grandmasters, well, Power Block isn't that good in PvE. The increased recharge isn't so relevant. The weakness can be nice, but then the damage is too irregular. For the Shatter skills doing more damage, I appreciate that some people might like this. This will like make your mind racks hit really hard. And what I just said about PvE mobs not using skills much means this is even stronger, because this is do more damage with your Shatters, and even more if they're inactive, which often PvE mobs are. So I can see that. But Imagined Burden is a huge trait. It's designed all around Greatsword. It means our Greatsword skills recharge quicker, so we get Phantasms faster. It means they are applying Cripple, so we have constant break bar pressure. And then also, it means that our Phantasm, instead of summoning 1 Berserker, we summon 2 Berserkers at once. That's why you're seeing 2 of them appear and then slicing through a foe. It's coming from this trait. Without Domination and without this Grandmaster, you don't get 2 at once. Now, you might think, wow, WP, that's insane. You just double the damage of one of your things, but it's better than double damage because, you know, 2 Phantasms is aggro shake and stuff. Well, it's not actually double. The new double cast does 25% less damage. So, if it did 50% less damage, you'd say, well, you know, it's just a lateral move. It's like, do you want the flavor of 2 and the aggro shake of 2, or do you? But we do gain damage, but it's not quite double, right? They are nerfed. They are slightly less damaging guys, but we get 2 of them. And that means a lot for synergies elsewhere. So hang in there. We're going to look at illusions, which is all about summoning stuff in a second. And you're going to see why summoning more things would be nice. So we summon a ton more because we can use the skill more regularly because the cooldown's lower. And, you know, especially think with alacrity, which we'll have so much of. And now we actually get 2 for 1. So this is just an incredible trait. And just remember that 25% nerf, though, because there's going to be another nerf coming in a second. So next, we've got illusions. Let's look at the minors. First of all, Cry of Frustration now does more confusion. That's completely irrelevant. We really don't care about that. Compounding Power is great, though. Every time we summon an illusion, that means a clone or a phantasm, we get a modifier. We do more condition damage and more flat damage. So, we will always have this modifier on us. It basically means do 10% more damage, because we're just constantly summoning on this build. This is the ultimate summon, as I said. So, then lastly, we have Shatters. Shatters gain reduced recharge, and this is pretty nice too, because we get so many clones here, we always want something to spend them on, and this will mean that you get it more regularly, and again, alacrity will stack on top of that. So for the first choice, the bottom option, the Pledge, this is just a torch trait. We don't worry about this. Even if you had torch on this build, which I said was fine, this is about condition damage on torch, really, so you don't worry. This upper one looks pretty cool. Shatterstorm, it means that you can double cast Mind Rack, and that means more damage, more alacrity. It's actually really exciting. I like this a lot, okay? Oh, sorry, it's not called Mind Rack, it's called Split Second. You can double cast Split Second now, but it's competing with one of the strongest traits on the entire setup. Persistence of Memory. When a Phantasm becomes a clone, it transfers its boons to you. So we summon Phantasms all the time. They use their animation, and then they turn into a clone. And as that happens, any boons that exist, the Master will now get. So what does that mean? Remember our pack runes? When we get in combat, we give ourselves 5 stacks of Might, Fury, and Swiftness, and we give our allies 5 stacks of Might, Fury, and Swiftness. Now, it doesn't really matter if those don't actually affect the Phantasms. The Phantasms will take those, use their animation, and give them back to us. Okay, so now I do definitely want to find another enemy for you guys here. So the way that this works is very comfortable and natural. You wouldn't believe how easy this synergy is to pull off, right? The way that this works, let's go upstairs, is we're going to engage on a mob, any mob we like, all right? And if we open with the Phantasm skill, we won't actually be in combat by summoning the Phantasm. It's only as the Phantasm first hits that we get in combat. And it's the second we get in combat that pack runes will trigger. So pack runes will always trigger on some kind of Phantasm as long as we open. So if I open with a Greatsword 4, watch. I give myself pack runes. They have the pack runes. They give me the pack runes. I'm up to 21 might instantly. And then my next little summon, I'm up to 25. We'll look at more stuff. So that's why pack rune is so fun. Fireworks also has a similar synergy here. So this is just so nice, okay? And, you know, this has a cooldown, and as fights are really long, maybe you could say, oh, the cooldown. But a big part of open world is you score the kill, and now you're just wandering around out of combat again, and it's recharging, and then you'll go in, like, it's very bursty, it's very staggered, it's very start, stop, but in certain ways. And so that synergy is just, you know, I can walk over to this guy, get that synergy again, and I didn't really have to try, I didn't have to think that hard for it. I just summoned my Berserkers, and now you can see why having 2 Berserkers means I'm actually doubling the value, or tripling even, the value of pack runes than I otherwise would have got as a solo player. So this is insane as a trait. Another way that you can run, by the way, if you're really struggling, where you actually sub off Domination, and you can pick up Inspiration. If you have a look in the Inspiration line, it's Phantasms have Aegis when they spawn. And so now you Aegis spam on top of yourself. You can do other amazing stuff in Inspiration for Resustain. You do take a hit to damage. But if you're going to have a really difficult fight, by doing that Inspiration sub, you can like start taking out loads of bounties and doing incredible amounts of stuff. Your sturdiness goes way up. But this is the baseline thing. So yeah, Persistence of Memory. Beautiful. What a cool synergy, right guys? Next, we have 2 traits we don't really care about. A Condi trait and a stealth-oriented trait. But instead, Phantasmal Haste. Oh, look. Phantasms spawn with quickness, and when we create a Phantasm, we give ourselves quickness. Okay, so let's pay attention to this. We summon a Phantasm, we gain 2 seconds of quickness instantly. They have 4 seconds of quickness. That 4 seconds of quickness is going to be enough for them to finish their animation faster. Okay, they will benefit from that. They'll more rapidly attack. Then they die, and they give us quickness. So now you can see a ton of quickness spam. I bet you thought that the quickness spam was to do with Chrono, right? Like everyone always thinks, Chrono's all about the quickness. Well, actually, a huge amount of our quickness, the engine we get from our quickness, And by the way, you just saw there, I used my engage skill without hitting the target. That is one thing. If you're engaging on the mount regularly, you can lose the pack rune synergy, right? Because, so you do want to think about that a little bit. So here, I cast my Phantasms. They cast quicker because they have quickness. Then well, we'll talk about another trait later. But as they die, they're just rolling it in on me. So again, these now mean give yourself quickness. These now mean, and you're understanding now why suddenly these are such high power utility skills, even though they're not on the tooltips, okay? So this synergy is just insane. And nicely, in this selection, we don't even care about the others. Okay, and finally we have the Grandmaster. Now remember, we're in the illusions line. It's all about summoning things, and there is such a dominant, amazing trait here. The bottom two, we don't worry about too much. Scepter and improving our shatters, we don't worry very much. So what you might have been thinking throughout this video is, okay, WP, congratulations. You can spam loads of might on yourself. But who cares? You're all about summons. You're all about phantasms. You're just auto-attacking, right? Well, on the greatsword, you're using this more minor stuff. Your split seconds are getting the might, but is the might really that good? Well, look at this trait. Phantasms will now deal increased damage for every stack of might that we have. Also, gain might whenever our Phantasms become clones. So, what this means is if we have a lot of might, we're turbocharging our stuff. You remember the nerf to 25% on this? We actually reclaim that by taking Phantasmal Force, because we can bump any of their damage by 25%, because we will have the 25 might there, okay? All of them are now hitting that much harder. So when you read this tooltip of 2,778, that's not including another further 25% modifier we will have in combat once we're hitting people, and we get that little bit of might up. So this is such a cool trait. And also, it's not only like buffing the Phantasms, it is our might, because it's the same interaction. They use their animation, they die, become a clone, we get the might. All right, so wow, the combos here are really, really lovely. It now means that we get double value out of this as long as we're taking this, because we get 2 Phantasms out of this. You know, adding more Phantasms, more is always better. The staff, for what it's worth, has a double Phantasm too, the Warlock, but the rest of the staff skills aren't very good for power gameplay. So Greatsword is the clear winner there. So there is kind of a cheesy build you can run like this in PvP, where you're staff and Greatsword, and you just have maximum spam everywhere. So, then we have the last line, and we are going Chrono. You could, in theory, run this setup on Mirage. Now, one of the things you could do as a power build, and one of the things that's nice about Mirage is you could keep ambushing now and using the sword to leap, and you can move around a bit more regularly. But in a world where mounts are there, I don't really value that light little leap too much, okay? But definitely Mirage is okay. Mirage actually gives you a really good ambush on the Greatsword 1. But that ambush alone will be capping you out with might and stuff. And so it means all these other synergies don't really matter. And then the rest of the Mirage stuff just doesn't matter that much. The Infinite Horizon, making all your clones attack, doesn't matter that much. It's not actually as much pressure as you'd think it would be. It looks really pretty and nice, but it's not as much pressure as you think it would be. And the other stuff isn't as good as like getting so much alacrity and so much CC and the GM we're going to see on Chrono in a second. So Chrono will become very evident. Now Chrono, every single set for Adept and Master, we actually have some fun things to play with. So sit up. First of all, the miners. Alacrity every time we shatter, and we've got so many Phantasms here and so many clones here. This does mean something. Remember on the build that you want to get 3 clones before you shatter realistically, so you get the maximum amount of alacrity per cooldown per button. So just kind of wait. Don't spam too heavily. Wait until you get the 3 and then go. But go as quickly as you see 3 comes in, because you never know. Another Phantasm might be about to die and become a clone, and then you've missed your chance to get a shatter out of it. So it's a game of waiting for you to get up to 3 and then shatter really quickly before you accidentally miss value. Then lastly, time marches on. We have permanent 25% move speed, and we shrug stuff off a little bit quicker. The move speed is okay. I'm on pack runes, or, you know, if you're on fireworks, you would have that anyway. For me then, you know, with all the swiftness and stuff that I've got anyway, it doesn't really matter. This is kind of a nothing trait. So let's look at our selections. First of all, you could, every time you interrupt, give yourself alacrity and then slow. And this is nice. The slow is another condi that would just continue draining their bars. And more alacrity. We don't have perma alacrity, so more alacrity is definitely nice. You could do this, but again, the interrupts are a little bit unreliable. You could make your shatters run in to blow up a bit quicker and do a bit more damage, or you can take my favorite here, which is all's well that ends well. It means that the wells we're running will actually heal us up a bit at the end, And it's just that nice little bit of resustain. I do care about quality of life. I do care about resustain. And don't forget, we're a Chronomancer. We could be in continuum split for any of this. All these combos I've talked about, you can double up. You could double up the gravity well, for example. And now they're CC'd and not hitting you, and you're resustaining from it. So I like all's well that ends well, but this is totally up to you. It really is. And you'd be impressed, by the way. If you're in a scenario where you're actually getting lots of interrupts, you're really going to love the amount of alacrity you get from this. You really are. But yeah, I'm sticking on that for now. Then for the middle, you've definitely got some choices. Improved alacrity. Any alacrity you get is now stronger. It runs out a lot quicker, but it's stronger. If you're taking this, I would probably definitely go up here in an environment where, you know, you can get interrupts. Otherwise, maybe take other things. Danger time is really nice. Now, I mentioned this briefly a second ago. Danger time. Gain crit chance against slowed enemies. Critical hits deal additional damage to slowed enemies. And that's for your illusions too. And we're all about the illusions. So if you run this trait, you don't have to go so heavy on the crit chance because you're getting some of it here as long as you keep the slow up, okay? So you might now actually want to look at taking the Well of Action because it's got the slow on there and you're going to want to roll that out. The quickness, though, just feels like it's a bit of a waste to me. Or again, you could go top and try to keep those interrupts so that the slow is there. Actually, a weird choice you could really go for. If you think it's going to be a pretty short fight very regularly, you could go for Arcane Thievery because that will dump some slow out. I don't know. This is a very low value. It's kind of a weird proposition. Maybe take this instead of the well. I don't know. But the idea is that this is actually a percentile modifier that will go onto your Phantasms. And it's nice. I like to actually build for a world where I don't have this and I can take other things. And what I actually am playing with and what you've been seeing on in this video is something I think most people would never really care about or think about. But it's Illusionary Reversion, which is if I get the triple shatter, which I already want to do because I want max value out of flow of time or whatever. If I get a triple shatter, I get another clone back for free instantly. I get another summon. And so this just gives you that extra bit of fuel to have mass alacrity. If you look back at the montage at the start, you see I'm just getting so much out so regularly. There's a thing you guys might not know about Chronomancer, but it was actually nerfed quite in a recent patch when all these shatters changed to be new skills. As most Mesmer variants, we're used to being able to press a shatter at any point. We don't have any fuel, and we can shatter anyway. But that's not there anymore. And since that's not there anymore, it actually feels kind of clunky and annoying to play Chrono. This trait sort of fixes that, because it means as long as you're going for triple shatters all the time, you will always have like that bedrock of one guy lingering. There's another thing that I want to explain to you guys in terms of aggro control. I think there's nothing squishy enough here for me to really show. But if I'm in the fight, and I've just done a triple shatter right after my Phantasms have ended, there's a chance, a small chance, but there's a chance that there's nothing on the board anymore. Or there's nothing right next to my target because I've just shattered a ton of stuff. And the Phantasm I have left is like, you know, a Warden or it's a Disenchanter at range or something. And when that happens, there's a chance now that the enemy actually decides, oh, I'll go for the Mesmer now. I'll go for him. Whatever, I'll take him out. However, if you take this trait, there will never be a moment where you are the closest thing or the juiciest looking thing, unless, you know, you're really in there with the sword attack. Because when I shatter, we'll wait for us to get our next guy. We can't. They die too quick. The build's too strong. When we shatter, another one will have spawned right next to him. And they'll prioritize that, okay? So this is really nice. It just keeps the engine flowing. But again, you can choose. You can definitely choose. Finally, though, we have the Grandmaster, and there's not much of a choice here. Lost time is really nice for sustaining slow if you're going all the top, but it's really not conducive to the rest of the idea that we're going for. Seize the moment, gain quickness. Don't worry, we have enough quickness. Lastly, Chrono Phantasma. Now, remember everything I said about double casting this and might and quickness and all this stuff on all of these. Remember everything that I just said there. Now we have Chrono Phantasma. The first time a Phantasm would become a clone, it instead resummons itself and attacks again. Wow. So everything we do, we double again. So we double cast this, we quad cast the Phantasmal Berserker now. This one skill is creating 4 Phantasms, and all of them are triggering Phantasmal Force, Phantasmal Haste, and Persistence of Memory. All of them. Okay, so one interesting thing about the wording here, on Chrono Phantasma, it says when the Phantasm would die, it instead of becoming a clone, will become the Phantasm again. So you're not actually making any clones. Then the trait Persistence of Memory is gain boons when your phantasms become clones. So surely you're not getting persistence of memory from that first summon anymore, because the first summon doesn't give you clones, it just gives you more phantasms. Surely you're going to wonder, do I still get boons from persistence of memory since there's no clones around? Do I get my cake and eat it too? Does the interaction work? And it does. So here in this slow-mo footage I'll show you. I summon 2 phantasms, we trigger pack runes, they have the pack runes. When these first 2 berserkers die, look at my might, it's 5. They die and I go up to 21 might. They haven't become clones yet. I have no clones on screen, but I have triggered persistence of memory, even though the wording is a bit weird. So the wording on the trait makes it sound like it shouldn't work, but it does work. And I just wanted to give you guys a real nice slow-mo look at that little synergy there. Now, finally, I get the clones, and I get another bang up of boons at that point. So yeah, all of them can potentially take a pack rune. By the way, one other thing with pack runes, it's sharing fury, as fireworks would too. One of the complications I think a lot of people have when they try to build this in PvE is they look at dueling. Now, dueling has all your phantasms have fury, and like loads of it. So that combo, your phantasms have fury, and then you take the fury. It's like, well, there you go, I got perma fury. But you might wonder, and dueling also has a minor trait that gives you fury. You might wonder, well, WP, where's your fury here? Where's your fury? It literally is pack runes that's doing it, right? Because pack runes is 8 seconds of fury without concentration and stuff, right? On all these targets, I get like 30 seconds of fury, right? I didn't hear because he attacked me. But that's where all my fury's coming from. So you will sustain just tons of fury without having to take dueling, okay? But with Chrono Phantasma, we're just getting all of this spam. Now, there is a downside. Similar to how Imagined Burden made our Greatsword Berserkers hit a little bit less hard, so too is that true for Chrono Phantasma. The resummoned ones, they daze themselves for a second, they won't instantly attack, and then when they go in, they do half the damage. The tooltip actually says 100% there, but isn't that 50%? Am I just bad at maths? But they don't hit as hard, okay, the second ones. So here, I can demonstrate this to you guys when we summon, say, our Focus 5, okay, because he probably won't kill anything, right? He's a Phantasm for us. And if we look, the Warden's going to come out. It's going to do its damage, and look at the number on it. Okay, this is 0 might as well, obviously. Also, he's building Vuln, by the way. That's one of the Vuln applicators that we've got. So he did a bit of damage. Now he's going again. And you see that he's actually going to do just a bit. He's going to kill it anyway because he's rolling all the Vuln up. So it kind of eliminates the downside. But that's what's going on. His baseline is actually a little bit lower. All right. And so that's what I was trying to express before. When we have a Phantasmal Defender that applies Taunt, it doesn't matter that the Defender does a bit less damage. The Taunt is the same. The Vuln is the same. The boon removal is the same. The cripple is the same, right? These guys are mostly damage, right? Let's be honest. This is a big damage here. It does mean that when we do the Greatsword guys and the second wave is coming out, they're nerfed by this and by this, but you've reclaimed a lot of it through all of the boons and the Vuln and all the other stuff that you're getting. And that's the combo. Double Greatsword guys that give you tons of might and benefit from might that resummon themselves with everything else. The ultimate summoner build. I adore this build. It's extremely effective. It will get you through everything. And another thing that may be biasing me to why I love this build so much is it also has like that beautiful through line. You know, it's got that beautiful bedrock of flavor in there that I really love. I always love playing summoners in games. And ArenaNet has truly made a really brilliant one here in this Chrono variant. So there you have it, guys. That's the way that I like to play Mesmer. I will make one little note that for this video, you've been watching me on Diviner's gear just to keep the boons rolling a little bit more. It's totally not necessary. And I've complemented with Marauders because, again, baseline, we want high precision for our Phantasms and stuff. And also, we do feel squishy if they finally get in, so that little bit of vitality felt good to me there as well. That's what I've been running here. I think they've been Berserker weapons. But if you want a big breakdown on all the different kinds of gear that you can run and runes and sigils, please do check out the other video on this playlist where I go into that into incredible detail. There's a playlist link in the description. And until next time, guys, I'll have another one for you very soon. Let me know what you think, and I will see you all, hopefully, very shortly. Cheers, guys. Take it easy.